Travis Cunha our first candidate?
Yes, so when you're ready, we'll have Danette bring him in.
All right, why don't you go ahead and do so?
Hello.
Hi, Travis. Welcome. I'm Michael Winkler. I'm the mayor, and other people can introduce themselves.
Paul Patino, Vice Mayor.
I'm Brett Watson on the City Council.
Sophia Pereira, Council Member. Nice to meet you, Travis.
Sophia, why don't you go ahead and start with the questioning?
Sure. Travis, why don't you tell us a little bit about your interest in the Economic Development Committee and what skills and strengths that you'll bring to it?
Well, my interest was just overall wanting to be more involved in the community. Right now, I'm working at the California Center for Rural Policy, and my old boss, Connie Stewart, told me I should join a committee if I want to get more involved. So I looked around, and this one looks really interesting. When I was looking online, to be honest, when I saw like the responsibilities and qualifications and stuff like that for all the topics, I wouldn't say I bring like a expertise to any major one thing, but I would bring like a definitely an interest to all of them and enthusiasm to like want to learn more and try to be as involved as I can where I can. What I think I can bring is I'm really good with analytics. I'm a research analyst at CCRP, or still a student. I'm also a grad student at the time, or at the moment in sociology. So I think I'm really good with analyzing trends and doing data analysis and things like that. Creating reports and other things would be my main strengths initially if I were to ever be brought on.
All right, Paul, could you go ahead?
Sure. Travis, where do you see this going? You want to get on this committee? Do you feel like you have any focus as far as economics in the city of Arcata specifically?
Well, in one point, I would want to focus on, I haven't given too much thought to a big focus, but I guess with employment and labor and things like that has been my main focus in school. So if I could focus on anything, I guess it would be that.
Okay. And you're in your master's program right now at Humboldt?
Yes, I am.
Okay. And you'd be able to devote the time necessary, like it's a meeting or so a month and most of an evening probably.
Oh, definitely. With everything going to Zoom, I've been locked in my house since March, so I have as much free time as anybody, I think, even with school and work. Yeah, I've been surprised about how much free time I've had just being at home all the time. So I don't think that'd be an issue.
Good. Thank you.
Oh, thank you. I'm really grateful being here. Yeah.
Yeah.
Brett, why don't you go ahead?
Have you had an opportunity to attend a meeting yet?
I have not. As far as meetings go in the community, I'm the note taker at the Humboldt Food Policy Council. I've been there for about a year. And I've volunteered in their various events and stuff. So that's about as much extent as I've had in community meetings and stuff.
All right, Travis, have you thought about what economic challenges there are in the community and things that you would like to see the committee address that you think that could be addressed more adequately than we have been doing so far in our community?
Wow. I guess one of the, just from a student perspective, employment for students has been really difficult, especially in like long-lasting jobs. I know when I got here, I had to wait a long time just to find work. And the only work I could find was in a grocery store or on a marijuana farm, but I didn't have a 4x4 truck to get anywhere meaningful for that kind of stuff. So I did a grocery store for about a year until I was lucky enough to get recommended for some jobs at school. I think that would be the main issue. I can only really speak from a student point of view, and kind of like a young person transplant. So that was what I've seen mostly. But that from some of my former classmates and stuff, I know that's been a reason why they've left, was housing and employment.
Do you have any questions for us?
I guess at the moment I don't. Sorry, I'm still like trying to think of everything. I'm really nervous right now. This is like the most formal meeting I've ever had, or interview, but I guess not at the moment. I just really like living here. I've only been here 2 years, so most of the things I would have to say are like overall positive. Coming from Southern California, it's really been a great experience. So, and I plan on being here for the future. So.
Right. Well, thank you. We will likely make a decision tonight among the applicants who are applying for these positions. And thank you very much for coming.
Yeah, no problem. Either way it goes, I appreciate you guys having me here. So thank you.
Okay. Thank you.
Okay, the next candidate is Walt.
Brett, why don't you, well, we can each introduce ourselves. I'm Michael Winkler. I'm the mayor of Arcata. Paul, go ahead.
Paul Patino, vice mayor.
Brett
Brett Watson, council member.
and Sophia.
Sophia Prayer, council member. Nice to meet you.
Nice to meet you as well.
And Brett, why don't you start?
Yeah. Why are you interested in serving on the committee?
Well, I've been a pretty active member of the community in a lot of different respects. I'm on the board of Arcata Economic Development Corp. I used to be on the Presidential Advisory Commission with Roland Richmond, and that kind of evaporated, unfortunately. I thought that was a really critical, interface tool. And I just see the community kind of being in this state of flux. And there isn't I don't know, it seems disassociated from the university on some levels. And I'd like to honestly bring some of that back, and so, yeah, and that's.
One other question. We've had, just looking at your experience, I know we've had trouble in the past finding people who are interested in chairing the committee, or people that are, have the experience to take on that role. Is that something you think you'd be interested in?
Oh yeah,
not necessarily immediately, but.
Yeah, no, well, I wouldn't want to do it for the first year, because I think you need to understand the playing field and the dynamics. But yeah, absolutely. I'm currently the president of Aedc, so I'm very familiar with Mr. Robert, his rules of order. And, so.
Thank you.
Right, Paul.
Yeah, Walt, concerning AEDC, do you see any potential conflict between being on that board and serving on the City of Arcata's Economic Development Committee?
No, absolutely not. In fact, I would love to see some more synergy. The PPP loans, things like that have gone out. We've done a lot of work in that, and identifying needs in the community. It's one of the things that I'm actually working on right now, is a 5-year plan for the strategic plan for AEDC, and I want to kind of focus ourselves on the needs, the real needs, and the unaddressed needs. Some of the historic projects that have been done by AEDC, including housing development, I think are important steps forward in this community. And I would like to see, that kind of come back around. So that's my,
yeah. Thanks, Walt.
Yeah, absolutely.
Sophia?
Yeah, can you talk a little bit more about what skills and strengths that you would bring to the Economic Development Committee?
Well, I'm a pragmatist. So, I'm always kind of looking for, I was talking to Susan Seaman the other day, and, about the different approaches to governance, where it's, a very long-term perspective and a short-term perspective. I tend to have a long-term perspective with an idea of, immediate impacts can generate enthusiasm or generate resistance. So you have to kind of create a plan that works for everybody, but also has a long-term goal in mind. And so I'm really focused on the long run, sort of the 5-year plan. It's like, where are we going? So I can bring that. I'm used to dealing with a lot of different dynamic people. I'm a banker, functionally, more of an analyst. I really don't want a banker, but so I'm used to dealing with people with agendas, people who want things. They don't always tell you what they want, but they want something, because that's why they're there. And so you're trying to like defuse the bomb and figure out, how to get everybody in the right place. My ex said once, the best way to govern people is to make them think it's their idea. So, so I think bringing people along in a vision is critical. And I think that answered your question.
Right. Walt, as far as how you would like to see the community develop economically, some kind of your vision of that, and what role do you think the committee and members of the committee can play in helping bring that about? I mean, that's a big question, but you can.
Yeah, it's a fair one. I mean, I think, my experience with committees and things like that is you can be as powerful as you want to be, and some just kind of, ebb into the background because they just have these, fluffy meetings and nobody really drives anything. And then there are opportunities to really seize the moment and drive process and change. I'm not necessarily one of those, take everything and shake it upside down, but I think COVID did a pretty damn good job of that. So I think we've got a real, hopefully not an inflection point, because I've always kind of viewed Arcata on an upward trend. The inflection wouldn't be what I would want to see, but I would, we've got some real challenges coming up. I mean, the loss of, I was listening to the interview with the woman who did the bookings for Humbrew's, and I mean, and that is tragic. I mean, you were talking about, a reason that people come to this community, and they bring money, they bring enthusiasm, they bring life. And if that light clicks off, we lose something. I mean, we lose something that's more important than money. We lose, identity. And I think that, a committee like this can help facilitate opportunities for businesses, can, support things depending on, what kind of checkbook you can get a hold of. You can drive real change. And so I'm a huge proponent. I used to be, well, obviously Aedc is an SBA, but I used to be an SBA lender with Humboldt Bank years ago. And that, I'm a huge supporter of small businesses. I think that's where it's a really dynamic part of the economy. So I would want to support, local businesses to do things and, give people a little bit of a safety net to take a chance. Part of that is knowing what's coming up next. It's hard to operate in an area of uncertainty, especially if you're putting your livelihood on the line. So I think clear communication of opportunity and matters to people. And it gives them permission to take a chance. So that's my 10-cent answer.
Right. And finally, do you have any questions for us?
It's I guess who won? That might be the good question. I really don't. I think some of these things are best approached in a rather circumspect. So I'm just kind of going to be the sponge for a while and figure out what's going on. Get a sense of what the agendas are, what people want. I mean, because I'm not here to set the agenda. I'm here to, and I don't want to say not set the agenda, but here to facilitate, a larger vision and add, I'm the cumin, not the steak. Cumin and steak doesn't sound like a very good combination, but Yeah, I mean, so no, I don't have any questions at the moment, but I'm quite sure I will at some point. I'd be very curious as to, the next question I would probably ask at another time is, what are your visions for this? Because that matters. You guys are elected. I'm just going up in front of you guys. I mean, I've watched the electoral process. It's brutal. And yeah, so, what do the people want?
Well, thank you. We will consider all the applicants tonight, and then we will likely make a decision tonight, and then we will get back to you soon. So thank you very much for coming in.
Absolutely. Thank you.
Our next candidate is Allison.
Hi.
Hey, Allison, I'm Michael. I'm the mayor, and Paul.
Paul Patino, Vice Mayor. Hi, Allison.
Hi.
Sophia
Sophia Pereira, City Council.
and Brett.
Brett Watson, council member.
Well, thank you for coming in. Paul, why don't you go ahead and start?
Yeah, Allison, I really appreciate that you've been here for a while and have been working, have a job, and are interested in sharing who you are with us in the city. And I think we know each other from the past somehow. And,
our paths have crossed for sure.
Right. And so I look at you as a real valuable, positive candidate. And, I don't have any particular questions at the moment.
Okay.
Thank you.
Well, thank you.
Sophia?
Yeah, why don't you tell us a bit about your interest in the committee and what skills and strengths you bring?
Okay. So I am a local. I grew up in Arcata and I've stayed here the whole time. I also had 2 local businesses. I had Crush and Harvest restaurants. And so I have like a very real interest in our local economic development. It's really important. And I want to get more involved in the process of governance, basically. And it's, I've been on the other side of it, and I'm interested in contributing to the governmental side of it. I'm in an MBA program also, and I'm a small business advisor with the SBDC. I think those both bring a lot to my knowledge and ability to talk about, where things could be improved and what processes could be, streamlined and stuff like that. And I'm currently at Coast Central in the risk management department, which is code for the cannabis banking situation. And I handled the application process for all of that. And so it's given me a really nice view into how much that is really bringing and developing Arcata's, tax revenue and income, basically.
Brett?
The application, the resume looked really good. I don't think I have any questions.
Let's see. Allison, what do you see as some long-term challenges for our community, and what role do you see for the committee or members of the committee to help address some of those long-term challenges?
Well, definitely COVID would be first priority in challenges. I feel like Arcata, the local businesses have done well, for the most part. I haven't heard of a ton of closures, but that would be the biggest issue. Longer term, I think there's room for a little more transparency for starting a business for people just beginning. It can be really overwhelming and confusing, and Arcata's small enough. I feel like some resources could be put on the website, stuff like that, to just aid in the process a little bit. And I don't know about funding, but I know there's even just small grants for very small business owners that are outside of cannabis. It would really help diversify the types of businesses that are starting up.
Well, tonight we're going to be very likely be making a decision among the candidates who are applying. We have some excellent candidates, and thank you very much for applying. Finally, do you have any questions for us?
What is the biggest priority that you guys see for this committee?
Sophia,
At least in the coming year.
Sophia, could you answer that from your perspective?
Yeah, I would say most current COVID. I think that you hit the nail on the head with that. Thank you.
Cool.
Okay,
I think for me, yeah, Michael, I think for me, it's finding a way to help people stay in business that are on the
edge. Brett, do you?
I agree with Paul and Sophia. I think doing what we can to help recovery from the economic impacts of COVID. Yeah, helping, like Paul said, helping people stay in business and trying to get through the next few months, especially.
All right.
Well, Allison, this is a very quick process, so thank you very much for being and we will let you
guys
know.
Okay, sounds great.
Bye.
It appears our fourth candidate has not shown up, so I believe that's all of your candidates for this evening.
Mm-hmm.
Well, that makes it easy. So 3 candidates, 3 positions. We just have to figure out who goes where.
We have term through September of 2021 and September of 2023.
I'd be in favor of giving the 2021 to Travis and then the 2023 to Walt and Allison.
So if you would, you can go ahead and make that motion when it comes up in the agenda.
Sounds good.
We'll do a double check. Since it's just a committee, I don't think Travis will have any conflict associated with his board president role for AEDC. But we'll just double check that before we get him started.
I mean Walt, but Walt.
Yes, sorry, yes, I meant Walt. Yeah.
Okay. Okay.
All right. Do we want to hold? And this will be the same Zoom. So we are live, but if you want to mute and stop your video, we can reconvene at 6 o'clock.
Sounds good. All right. All right. Welcome to the November 4th, 2020 Arcata City Council meeting. First, we had a closed session, and before our regular city council meeting, we had this closed session. There's nothing to report out from that closed session. All right. As I said, good evening, and thank you for viewing the November 4th regular meeting of the Arcata City Council. The City Council meeting is being held as a teleconference in response to local efforts to reduce the spread of the COVID-19 virus. We want to thank the community and encourage everyone to keep up the efforts to slow the spread of the COVID-19 virus in Arcata. We know that by wearing masks and practicing social distancing, it has helped keep our curve flat, our community healthy, and businesses open. Please support safe shopping by masking up in Arcata. If you wish to make public comment during the meeting, either at the 2 open public comment periods or for an individual agenda item, there are 2 ways to do this. One, if you are logged onto the Zoom meeting webinar, click on the raise your hand on the right-hand side of the screen. When it is time for public comment on the item or you wish to speak on, the clerk will unmute you. You will have 2 minutes to comment. Method 2, you can access the meeting by phone. Call the number at the bottom of the screen. Enter the meeting ID also at the bottom of the screen. Press *9 on your phone. This will raise your hand. When it is time for public comment on the item on which you wish to speak, the clerk will unmute your phone. We'll hear a prompt that will indicate your phone is unmuted. You will have 2 minutes to comment. If you wish, please join me for a flag salute. I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all. Will the city clerk please call the roll?
Mayor Winkler?
Here.
Vice Mayor Patino?
Here.
Councilmember Pereira?
Here.
Councilmember Watson?
Here.
All present.
All right, first is ceremonial matters. Paul, would you please read the first proclamation on National Hunger and Homelessness Awareness Week?
Okay, here we go. This proclamation is from the City of Arcata in recognition of National Hunger and Homelessness Awareness Week, November 15th through the 22nd, 2020. Whereas people from all walks of life, including families with children, employed and unemployed workers, elderly residents, veterans, disabled individuals, and youth are impacted by hunger and homelessness. And whereas the community recognizes that hunger and homelessness continue to be a serious problem for many individuals and families living in Humboldt County. And whereas the aim of the National Coalition for the Homeless is to eradicate homelessness by solving the root cause of it, to educate the public about the many reasons people are hungry and homeless, including the shortage of affordable housing for low-income residents, and to encourage support for organizations committed to sheltering, providing support services, as well as meals and food supplies to the homeless and hungry. And whereas the theme of the National Hunger and Homelessness Awareness Week 2020 is being homeless is not a crime. And whereas the California Center for Rural Policy reported in their Humboldt County food assessment that more than 31% of adults experience food insecurity, while 37% of households with children experience food insecurity. And whereas more than 1 in 6 Americans, 18.2%, said there had been times over the last year that they didn't have enough money to buy food that they or their family needed. So now, therefore, be it proclaimed, City Council, City of Arcata, that November 15th through the 22nd, 2020 is National Hunger and Homelessness Awareness Week and encourage all people in the community to work together to find meaningful solutions for these problems. Dated November 4th, 2020, signed by Michael Winkler, our mayor.
Thank you. And Sophia, could you go ahead and read the proclamation in recognition of Adoption Awareness Month?
Whereas every child deserves a loving, culturally sensitive, and permanent family. Sadly, there are many children in Humboldt County, the state of California, and worldwide who do not have the comfort and security of having their essential needs met by the adults in their lives. These children are waiting for an adoptive parent to help meet their needs. And whereas around 430,000 children are in foster care in the United States, more than 1/5 of them live in California. In Humboldt County, there are around 400 children in foster care. Many of these children will need permanent adoptive homes. And whereas Adoption Horizons has been providing services to children and families for 37 years, assisting families who are waiting to adopt children domestically and internationally, and providing them with the guidance, education, and support to be successful parents. Now, therefore, be it proclaimed that the City Council of the City of Arcata recognizes the month of November 2020 as Adoption Awareness Month. The Council encourages Arcata's residents to support and celebrate families who adopt and to remember the children who are still waiting. Signed today by Mayor Michael Winkler.
Right, thank you. And Brett, would you read the proclamation in recognition of National Hospice Month?
Whereas Hospice of Humboldt has been caring for those who are terminally ill and their families for over 41 years. Hospice care focuses on quality of life with an emphasis on pain control and symptom management. Patients receive heartfelt care so they can live peacefully in their home or at the Ida Emerson Hospice House, surrounded by their loved ones. In the last year, Hospice of Humboldt served over 660 patients and their families in Humboldt County. Whereas the Hospice of Humboldt staff, including physicians, nurse practitioners, registered nurses, social workers, home health aides, chaplains, physical therapists, dietitians, and volunteers, remain committed during the ongoing public health crisis to providing patient-centered care, honoring the wishes of their patients. And whereas Hospice of Humboldt provides grief support services and information to our entire community, including support groups, one-on-one counseling, and counseling for businesses and schools. And whereas Hospice of Humboldt believes that when further treatment is no longer the right answer, hospice can provide new hope for a comfortable end of life with dignity. Hospice provides a life-affirming environment where patients can find meaning and purpose at the end of life. Hospice of Humboldt encourages everyone to learn more about the options available for the last stage of life and to share their wishes with their family, loved ones, and healthcare professionals. Now, therefore, be it proclaimed by the City Council of the City of Arcata that November 2020 is National Hospice Month. The Council wishes to congratulate and thank Hospice of Humboldt for increasing awareness of the importance of hospice care and for providing these essential services in our community for the last 41 years. Dated today, November 4th, 2020, and signed by Mayor Michael Winkler.
Okay. Thank you, Brett. Next is the annual report from the Transaction and Use Tax Oversight Committee.
So we have the chair of that committee, Jeff Knapp. If you can go ahead and unmute yourself and provide that report. Thank you. Maybe I can help you unmute.
Unmute. Okay.
Perfect. There you go.
Am I here?
You are. Perfect.
Okay. Well, anyway, well, good evening, and thanks to the council for giving the Transactions and Use Tax Committee, or TUTOC, this opportunity to report on last year's results. At the beginning of our report, under the committee members heading, you'll find we have several vacancies, which we hope the council will fill. TUTOC was created in 2008 when Arcata voters approved Measure G, a transactions and use tax of 0.75%. Promotion of the tax promised voters the funds raised would be prioritized 2/3 for street repair and improvement and 1/3 for public safety. At that time, full staffing of the police department was especially important, with the department down 7 officers due to budget restraints. Measure G also created an ongoing oversight committee, which is this committee, for the use of Measure G funds. Our committee realizes this 2/3, 1/3 ratio can't be held hard and fast. While
We lost your audio, Jeff. We'll give you just a second to see if you come back on. Andrea?
I'm here as well. Can continue onward if we don't get Jeff back.
Do we have his phone number? Would it be possible for him to phone in?
Yes, I can give him a call to see if that's easier than having him on a cell phone connection or what connection he's on.
Maybe
Whichever, we can reestablish connection if it's possible.
should we go ahead and take the consent calendar and then come back to this report, and we'll give them a few minutes to reboot?
Well, what next would be early oral communications.
Oh, yeah, perfect.
Right, early oral communications. This 15-minute time period is provided for people to address the council on matters not on the agenda. At the conclusion of all oral communications, the council may respond to statements. Any request that requires council action will be set by the council for a future agenda or referred to staff. Speakers addressing the council at this time are limited to 2 minutes, and we can take up to 7 speakers. Please raise your hand if you are on Zoom, or press *9 if you are calling in by phone and wish to make a comment. Do we have any members of the public who would like to make comments during this period?
We are not having any raised hands, so it looks like no public comment for this item.
And Andre, if we get a call back from Jeff, let me know. Otherwise, I'll proceed with the consent calendar. All matters on the consent calendar are considered to be routine by the City Council and are enacted in one motion. There is no separate discussion of any of these items. If discussion is required, that item is removed from the consent calendar and considered separately. At the end of the reading of the consent calendar, council members or members of the public can request that an item be removed for separate discussion. A, approve the minutes of the City Council meeting of October 21st, 2020. B, bi-weekly report on general warrants. C, declare a continuation of the local emergency related to the coronavirus pandemic. D, declare a vacancy on the Transactions and Use Tax Oversight Committee due to absences for a term expiring September 30th, 2022, and authorize the city clerk to advertise and recruit individuals to serve on the committee. E, approve a proclamation in recognition of National Nurse Practitioner Week, November 8th through 14th, 2020. And F, authorize a grant application to the California Natural Resources Agency, Ocean Protection Council, for the Proposition 68 Coastal Resilience Arcata Living Shoreline Pilot Project. And G, approve an agreement with the Humboldt Transit Authority, HTA, for parking maintenance and repair services for fiscal year 2020, 2021 in the amount of $135,000. And authorize the city manager to execute all applicable documents. Would any member of the council like to pull an item?
Mayor, staff would like to pull item E just to read it this evening.
All right. Any member of the public who would like to pull an item on the consent calendar?
We do not have, no.
Okay. Councilmember Watson. Go ahead.
I was going to make a motion to approve the consent calendar minus item E.
Do we have a second?
I'll second.
See, so we have a motion and a second. I will call the vote by roll call. Councilmember Watson,
Aye.
Councilmember Pereira,
Aye.
Vice Mayor Patino,
Aye.
and I vote aye. Vice Mayor Patino, could you go ahead and read the proclamation for National Nurse Practitioner Week?
I'm going to find it first.
Yeah, I don't see it myself.
I don't think I have a copy of it in my.
Is it in our packet?
Yeah, it should be in your written packet.
It's on page 55.
I can go ahead and read it if you'd like, Paul.
Oh, I've got it, Fred.
Okay, great.
This proclamation from the City of Arcata is in recognition of National Nurse Practitioner Week, November 8th through the 14th, 2020. Whereas nurse practitioners and NPs serve as trusted healthcare providers for patients throughout our state, and whereas we celebrate 2020 as the International Year of the Nurse and the Midwife, and whereas NPs continue to work tirelessly to diagnose and treat patients with COVID-19 and to combat community spread nationwide, while simultaneously grieving NP colleagues who have lost their lives during the pandemic. And whereas NPs work to expand access to care in underserved communities, end health disparities, and combat systemic racism in healthcare. And whereas NPs provide high quality primary, acute, and specialty care services by focusing on health promotion, disease prevention, health education, and counseling, guiding patients to make smarter health and lifestyle choices every day. And whereas NPs are highly skilled practitioners with advanced education and clinical training, building upon their initial registered nurse preparation. Whereas there are over 290,000 licensed NPs in the US and over 20,000 in California, where the recent passage of AB 890 will expand access to NP care. Now therefore be it proclaimed to City Council, City of Arcata, that November 8th through 14th, 2020 is a National Nurse Practitioner Week in recognition of the countless contributions NPs have made over the past half century and will continue to make on behalf of the health and well-being of the residents in our community. Dated November 4th, 2020, signed by Michael Winkler, Mayor.
Thank you, Paul.
Mayor, I believe we have Mr. Knapp back. We just need to double check. Jeff, can you talk on this, or are you on a call-in? I've got two items that might be you.
I'm on two things right now. I just unmuted on the.
Okay, I think you're good. I think we can hear you. So
Hear me? Oh, okay.
go ahead.
Can you hear me now?
There, now we can.
Yes, yes, we can.
I'll get going
I
and
can.
get off before I get done again. I guess I was talking about the 2/3, 1/3 ratio. A significant reflection in the ratio may be necessary in order to maintain adequate. Can you hear me? I'm getting some static here.
Yep, it sounds good here, Jeff.
It's good. Okay. To maintain adequate public staffing in future periods. This is the case for the current fiscal year 2020 to 2021, where the budgeted ratio is 3/4 public safety and 1/4 budgeted to street infrastructure. We highlight this to remind the council the original promise of Measure G was to support public safety in streets, and the council and city staff need to ensure these tax monies are used for those purposes, which are the purposes Arcata's citizens voted for. We urge the council to closely review reports from the city engineer and
Okay, we lost you again, Jeff. Are you still on your phone? Maybe if we let the call-in user one in.
Yeah, we'll try that. Are you there, Jeff?
You can try on your phone. Is perfect. Go ahead.
How am I doing now?
Excellent.
Sounds good.
Oh, okay, let's get this going then. Anyway, we urge you to see the city engineers and police chiefs reports showing what they've accomplished. Our streets are better and safer, and more street projects are planned. And although city revenue reduction from the COVID-19 pandemic caused a temporary reduction in police department staffing, the chief's report shows an extraordinary progression in education and training in his department on top of regular police duties. So we encourage the city to maintain staffing levels for the police department and the levels of appropriation for street improvements. We encourage also the council to continue making decisions regarding other general fund expenditures as if the transactions use tax did not exist. If revenue projections for this tax exceed their current budget, we recommend the council first align funding with the 1/3 public safety and 2/3 streets, which Measure G, before using the additional funds for other general purposes. And the committee thanks the council for honoring Measure G. If you have questions or observations about our committee or this tax, we or city staff will be glad to hear from you. And that's it for me.
All right, questions and comments from council. Could you start, Brett, please?
I'm sorry, what was that?
Oh, any comments on the report from the
Okay, got it.
Yeah, I don't think I have any questions this evening. I appreciate everyone's service on the committee, and we can definitely look at filling those vacancies.
Thank you.
Sophia?
Thank you, Jeff. Really appreciate it.
You're welcome. If that's it, I'll sign off.
Paul?
Thank you, Jeff. Thank you, Jeff, and hopefully we can get those vacancies filled right away.
Great.
Thanks for being there.
Jeff,
You're welcome.
Could you summarize how the split between public safety and streets has been progressing lately for the audience and for us?
Yes. Right now, look here. Right now, it's been 3/4 and 1/4 in terms of 3/4 for public works, streets, and 1/4 for safety, police protection.
So it seemed over the years that a lot more of it was going to public safety and smaller amount to streets. So it looks like it's moved back to a higher proportion for streets of late.
Can I make a correction on that? It's 3/4 to public safety for this budget year for fiscal year 2021.
I'm sorry.
And then 1/4 for streets. Thank you, Jeff. You mentioned it earlier. It's just a correction.
I apologize.
No worries.
I'm mixing the two up.
No worries.
3/4 public safety and 1/4 for street infrastructure.
Right. So as far as city projects, how is that? I don't know if Andrea or Jeff or Karen can answer that. Is how are we doing as far as being able to cover the needs of the city as far as street maintenance and reconstruction?
I can. Do you want me to answer some of that, Karen?
Yeah. Go ahead, Andrea.
So I just wanted to touch upon that. So in this budget year, there have been significant reductions in some of our street projects. And even before this budget year, where we saw the drop off in revenues because of COVID-19, in our general fund, we went back for a couple of our projects to actually reduce the scope of those street projects. So there are reductions to try to save the general fund impact and the Measure G funding for the streets. In order to actually continue on with our street projects this year, we're heavily reliant on our highway users tax, our gas diesel tax funds, and our SB1 funding from the state. So we are relying on that and also dipping into our streets reserves in order to continue with our projects. As far as the significant impact that the revenue reductions have had this year, and making sure that Measure G funding is dedicated to general fund, with the majority of that being public safety. I
looked at it in the report, but could you also sort of refresh us on what we're doing as far as, I don't remember what the metric is called, but it's basically a pavement condition index of whether we're able to maintain our streets at the current level, or whether we've had a deterioration or an improvement in the index of streets within Arcata.
Yep, I will hand that off to our city engineer, Mr. Khatri, to explain our PCI.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, thank you, Andrea. Good evening, Mayor, Vice Mayor, Council member, staff, and members of the public. If you look at the scale that is in your staff report, it shows historically our PCI was in the range of 67. It wasn't the best, I would say, in 2015 when we did a lot of road projects, and it has dipped only few. In last 5 years, I would say 65. And for some of you who doesn't know how the PCI works, is when the PCI is in up to 50, it's measured in the scale of 100. It's 1 to 50 is very bad. 50 to 70 is good, and anything more than 70 is excellent. And we've never been excellent in the history of Arcata, but we've been maintaining our city streets in the range of 67. And we've been doing that in the last 5 years. We have done a great job of maintaining that PCI. It has dipped to 63, 64 last year. But again, we did some pavement and slurry project over the last 2 years. So we just redone our model. And as of yesterday, after doing the project that we did, right now our PCI is again back to 67. However, looking at the fundings for future, the way it is, we may not be able to achieve that if we are not able to spend the same amount of money. Generally, we spend in the range of $1 to $1.5 million every year on the street capital project and maintenance project. Last year and this year also, we were able to do some of that because we were fortunate enough to get money from gas tax and SB1. But next year, that may not be the case. So we want to make sure that we have some money through Measure G in future so that we are able to keep our PCI in the level of 67 or better.
On page 29 of the packet, I was looking at the table, which is titled Current PCI by Functional Class.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, so you're showing arterial is 75, which is very good. Collector at 56, which is good. Residential local is 64, which is also good. And then proposed private non-county, I'm not familiar with that one, which is the gray bar.
Trying to find my report here. I memorized that. Oh, let's look at electronic. Sorry. So what was your question again on that?
Oh, well, I'm not familiar. On the right-hand bar, which is 44, it's saying proposed private non-county. So wondering if, since it's private, whether we have some responsibility or involvement in that. I was wondering why that's included, and what the relationship is between the city and these private non-county roads.
Not have a scale in front of me, so. Andre, can you screen, or who has that capability? I'm trying to find that page, and
yeah, it's page 29 of 125 in the packet. And let's see, what's that? So it's packet page 29. Karen, can you bring that up, or?
I can share my screen if that's helpful. I don't know if Karen, if you have the ability to let me, you can't do that in the webinar format.
Oh, you should be able to share your screen right now.
Oh, okay, great.
Oh,
so let me.
I found it.
Oh, okay.
Sorry.
You can also share your screen, Netra.
So that everybody knows what we are talking about. So
that table in the center of the page.
So those are like a private and local streets, like a residential, like a very local street. I think there are like minor streets, like alleys and all that stuff.
So that would be something that it's just for our information, but it's not something that the city is responsible for?
No, we are responsible for those as well. But they are like a, not only local, I would say like a super local street, like a alley or small street that comes to a major street.
So
I think it's just unfortunate titling that the PCI classification system uses. That's a little bit deceiving, that they are not really private. They are city-owned right-of-way areas.
So are those, what I would assume that that's low priority compared with the others, since they're not.
Yeah, those are like a least priority streets that we do. Mainly we focus on collector, major roads and arterials. Those are our main focus for when we try to spend money. And local street projects, like for example, example of that, one of the private / non-county roads would be Park Avenue, which has a very less residents, and it's we don't put as a capital project, but we do that as a in-house project. Our city, we will purchase the asphalt and our city crew will pave those streets.
Mm-hmm. Okay, well, those are all the questions I have. I'm sort of being wonky as an engineer, I think, in this kind of thing. But anyways.
No, that's good. I think at least we get a chance to show our graphs, so that's good question.
Yeah. So anyway, I think it's good that we've been able to maintain the streets at a high level, because I know that street deterioration is a major problem long term in many areas, and that Measure G has helped us to maintain things at a much higher level than we would have been able to otherwise. Right. So those are all the questions I have. If no other member of the council has a question, or
there was a committee member, Steve Cole, who joined in, I think, was here to help answer questions, and I think had something that he wanted to add to a question that was asked. Is that correct, Steve? Go ahead and unmute yourself.
I was just going to offer to fill in for Jeff if he could get back online. That's fine. Thank you.
All right, thank you.
Okay, well,
yeah, Michael.
Yes.
Michael, Paul here. I just wanted to say the curb cuts on 6th and I believe it's 6th and 5th and and 7th and I really appreciate that happening. And, you know, all around downtown. It's been years looking at that and hoping that they'd finally get done. And I really appreciate to see this happening. Whether or not it's coming out of Measure G, I'm not sure, but I'm glad it's happening. So I just wanted to say thank you.
Just to respond on that, yes, some of the money does come on the sidewalk project through Measure G historically also. So I would say yes, we should be thankful to Measure G for those work. And that is part of our annual sidewalk project that we just are in progress.
So any further questions or comments on this, or comments from the public?
No comments from the public.
Okay, well, thank you, Jeff, and thank you, Steve, and thank you, Netra. And we will move on.
So before we move on to old business, Mayor, if we could just do a motion on the consent calendar item E.
I'll make a motion to approve consent item E.
Second.
All right. We have a motion and a second. Councilmember Watson.
Aye.
Councilmember Pereira.
Aye.
Vice Mayor Patino.
Aye.
And I vote aye. All right. Thank you. Next is old business. Arcata Police Department's update on police reform. Could I please have a report from Chief Ahern?
Yes, good evening, Mayor Winkler, council members, city staff, and community members. This is a monthly update on police reform changes that we're making within the organization. With me tonight is Jesse Lopez. Jesse is the vice chair of the Public Safety Committee, and it's somewhat of a newer format for us. As you know, these monthly updates not only include the work that all of you have delegated to the Public Safety Committee, but our ongoing efforts that have been ongoing, for the last couple of years to really reshape the organization. Some of the updates are from the National Police Foundation, from the Humboldt County Civil Grand Jury Report, certainly from the work of the Public Safety Committee that all of you have asked them, to complete, and then just the in-house best practices that we have initiated within the organization. What I try to do, instead of bringing you separate reports from all of those, is to combine progress into one monthly report and a presentation. So the staff report has been presented. I will defer to Jesse when we get to the portion of the report on some of the work of the Public Safety Committee. Tonight's report will include updates on our progress on implementing the National Police Foundation recommendations, as well as the ongoing work of the Public Safety Committee. As you know, the Public Safety Committee has developed two subcommittees to work on two very significant priorities of the council. One being, as revenues are restored, how are those funds, or how should those funds be spent on social service type of positions within the organization? And then the other committee is working on presenting recommendations to you on civilian oversight models to consider. I know Jesse's going to talk a little bit about that, but prior to that, I would just like to say that during the September 23rd Public Safety Committee meeting, the Civilian Oversight Committee did do their first reporting out. They still have some other work to be doing, but they came up with really 4 models. It's not a recommendation, but what they wanted to do was to give you some idea as to where they were headed in terms of the research that they have done and where they may end up in terms of a formal recommendation. When they do get to that point, there are some other things they want to emphasize, and that is the need for transparency in this process, whichever model's adopted. And they really want to emphasize and promote community input in the review of our policies, procedures, and of the Arcata Police Department culture. Subcommittee was awaiting or is awaiting some data compilation that was going to get them to the next phase of their research. That data compilation was concluded today. I provided it to Andrew Campbell, who is the lead for that subcommittee. So I'll wait to hear back from Andrew in terms of what other information he and the subcommittee may need to ultimately get to a point where they could provide some recommendations to you. Next, for the Public Safety Committee, they finalized a community safety quick reference guide. And once all of you get an opportunity to review that and offer any input or suggestions on modifications, we'd like to go ahead and release that guide to the public. It's basically a one-stop place for people to get information on how to report information to the police department, how to get information on resources. And there's also some tips on personal safety as well. And I think Jesse wanted to talk a little bit more about the quick reference guide as well as the work of the subcommittee. So Jesse, if you're on, if you want to talk about those 2 items, please go ahead.
Hello, Brian. Hello, Council. This is Jesse. I guess a few things about the committee. It will help provide residents a guide of when to call the non-emergency line versus when to call 911, along with info about other health and safety related resources. We're hoping to potentially mail this out. We may still make some changes regarding some punctuations and wording, but overall we're fine with the content. And I hope to include this on the website, which is another project that was started during the task force and I am now helping with. I'd like to feature that on one of the pages. The website will also be a place so the public can find resources to contact APD, Public Works, Environmental Services with safety and health concerns. It'll be another place to access the RIMS data and maps. And it's still in development, but I've been in contact with Dylan about getting it hosted under the name safearcata.org. When it comes to the alternate staffing positions, we have yet to solidify any formal recommendations, but we are focusing on positions that would be held by non-sworn officers who may not carry guns, but still have the capacity to help with health-related issues. We also believe there needs to be improved capacity of social and health support services, and perhaps these positions are not entirely centralized in the police department. We are in the process of defining what this recommendation should look like, and we are waiting on more discussion and data that can help guide us. In regards to the community and policing oversight committee, I'm just going to share a few key points that our committee member presented. He mentioned that useful forms of review are concerned with department policies, procedures, culture, since these are things that influence officers' behavior. In order to be effective, the oversight committee needs to have the power to enact policy and policy and training changes, and not just make recommendations. This too is a large topic that we are still discussing. We've also mentioned creating a survey that we're potentially developing questions for. That concludes what I have to share, unless you have any more questions.
Thanks,
Could you stay online, please? And I'm going to ask questions. I'm going to give the opportunity for members of the council to ask questions of either Chief Ahern or Mr. Lopez. Vice Mayor Patino, could you start, please?
Yeah, Michael or Jesse. Actually, when I look at the form, I hope the font's a little bigger, and maybe the picture of Arcata looking down G Street could be a little smaller, because when the font, if you're in an emergency and you look at it and you can't quite read the stuff, it doesn't really help. So I think it's great to have this. I'm a little concerned that as a quick reference, it may not be as quick as I would expect it to be, probably because of the font and the detail. So I don't know. I hope you can have a chance to look at that. I didn't really write any particular notes outside of having some difficulty trying to read all this and then look at it and say, oh, is it or is it not something that should be non-emergency? So as this proceeds, before we put it totally into print, I think we need to get some agreement on the emergency, non-emergency stuff. For one of the things said something about gunfire in here. It said well, I can't find it. Sorry. Anyways, it's just the font, and maybe trying to make it a little briefer so that people would actually use it. Maybe it could turn into a refrigerator magnet. So thanks.
Thank you for the input. This pamphlet has been in development for years now, and I'm hoping to at least include it on the website in its draft form when it does go out for revisions. And we would continue to update this, but I think it just serves as a guide, maybe not necessarily in the time of emergency, but when one has a free chance to familiarize themselves with the resources that Arcata has to offer.
Councilmember Watson? Questions or comments?
No, I don't have any. Thank you.
Councilmember Pereira?
Nothing to add. Thank you. Great work on the pamphlet.
I think it looks really good. I think it has a tremendous amount of information in small space. One thing I was interested in is if this could also be put out in Spanish and in Hmong, which are the most common languages other than English in this area, I believe.
That's a great suggestion.
We do have funds available for Spanish translation right now through a National League of Cities grant. And so I'll see if we can work with our grant administrator on the Spanish translation.
Right. And as I was saying, I think that this is really excellent. And one thing that I think that could help would be if this were available laminated, so that people could put it up on some other surface and have it available, and it would be that way it would be durable and long lasting.
We can definitely do that, Mr. Mayor. And these are great suggestions. And, you know, this is also, and obviously the staff report goes into a little bit more detail on some of our updates on training and progress on 3 additional National Police Foundation recommendations. We're pretty close to implementing, you know, all 36, although, you know, full implementation, you know, there are a few where there's just going to be an ongoing work for us, you know, to continue to, you know, be that community-oriented policing organization and building those partnerships and being an inclusive organization and really setting a standard for inclusiveness and diversity, you know. So, but, you know, this is also a great opportunity too, to have Jesse here. And, you know, the city manager suggested this idea, you know, to have someone from the committee join me in select monthly updates, because it does, you know, give you a chance to hear directly from, you know, the committee on the exceptional work that they're doing and their dedication, which I know you all appreciate. But it's also an opportunity, you know, if you do have any input or guidance, you know, either tonight or in the future on the direction and if we're tracking right, or if there's some, you know, some shifts and changes we should make in the direction, you know, please, you know, take advantage of that, because ultimately our goal is to present to you what it is you're envisioning, you know, as the Public Safety Committee continues to do their work. So, so thank you all for the input tonight.
I have one other comment too, that in looking at your report, that you laid out what the types of review for citizen complaint would be, and with a spectrum from one end to the other in terms of the power that the oversight board would have, from having direct authority to implement you know, punitive action against the person if misconduct was the conclusion, or the other end was just an advisory role. Could you talk about that spectrum and what the choices were along that spectrum? Because I think that's something there's been a lot of input from the community to have that function operating.
Yeah, it's a great point, Mr. Mayor. And if you look throughout the country, there really are, depending upon, you know, the municipality, you'll see all of these in various forms being utilized. And I think a lot of it really does depend on, you know, the council and what the community's expectations are. You know, certainly civilian oversight is it's needed. It's been coming. You know, it's sort of been this wave. Many organizations have utilized it for years, but others have been holding out almost to the point where they're forced, you know, to implement it. But, you know, you have a police department here in Arcata who welcomes it. I think really the one of the questions we're going to have to answer at some point is cost. And I think the more oversight you provide and the more involvement that communities have in the police department business, there may be an expectation from community members that they be paid for, their services. So, I think a good place to, again, the Public Safety Committee will ultimately make the recommendations, but having the ability for a completed internal affairs investigation, for example, for community members to have unfettered access to that entire case file, everything from the reports to the interviews to the body-worn camera video, the MAV video in the car, that's a big step. And that's something that we welcome. We want the community to come in and say, we agree with your findings. Or we want them to come in and say, we don't agree, and we think there's other questions you should have asked that you didn't. And we're telling you as an investigator to go back and ask those questions. So, some of the other models, that are, there's very limited oversight. I don't know. I think we can do better than that. That's better than that. That's my personal opinion. Certainly the Public Safety Committee ultimately will make recommendations and you'll all ultimately make the call. But I think we can start at a place to where the community can legitimize this process by saying, we do have access. We can direct the police department in how to conduct a more thorough investigation. When you get into the arena of paid employees or determining discipline, for example, there's a big shift there. And then that's when we'll have to introduce, obviously, labor, and we'll have to look real closely at the law. And obviously Nancy's going to have play a significant role in this as well, regardless of which model you ultimately decide, to implement. So certainly various degrees of oversight, but I think what the Public Safety Committee subcommittee has identified, I think we definitely can find something in there that you'll all want to adopt at some point.
Right. Thank you. Do we have any members of the public who would like to comment on this item?
A reminder, if there is any members of the public that would like to comment on the item and you're logged into Zoom, click on the raise your hand on the right hand side of your screen. It doesn't look like we have any call-ins, so I won't go over that. Does not look like we have any public comment on this item there.
Michael, I had something to say. As a general law city, what's our limit on what the police citizen oversight committee can do? I mean, I understand there is a limit for general law cities. And I just hope that we're making sure we're paying attention to that and that we don't dream up something that we're not allowed to do because we don't have a charter.
You're correct, sir. And I think really where we wanted to go was to look nationwide initially to give the Public Safety Committee some idea as to what civilian oversight really looks like. And then as they narrow their focus, and I think you just hit the nail on the head, really one of our next steps is to confer with Nancy and to maybe identify what the committee is zeroing in on in terms of potential recommendations, and then getting that expertise opinion from Nancy in terms of which ones would be lawfully applied here in Arcata and which ones wouldn't. And then obviously that'll direct, the recommendation even tighter. So a great call, and certainly I think was one of our upcoming steps in this process. Because you're right, we don't want to go too far in the research if we're spending time on models that just would not be applicable here in Arcata.
Yeah, and especially since Eureka's working on this, and being a charter city, they have different limits. And so if we don't get clear about this, the public can be misunderstanding why we're not doing what they're doing or vice versa. So thank you.
So as far as questions or comments, Councilmember Watson?
No, I don't have anything. Thank you.
Councilmember Pereira.
Nothing to add. Thank you.
Well, thank you, Chief, and thank you, Mr. Lopez.
Thank you all.
Thank you.
Next, under old business, is approve an agreement with Humboldt Waste Management Authority for receiving and processing green waste, and authorize the city manager to execute all applicable documents. May I have a staff report from Director Andre, please?
Yes. Good evening, Mayor and members of the City Council. This is the an item for requesting your approval of an agreement with Humboldt Waste Management Authority for receiving and processing green waste, and authorize the city manager to execute all applicable documents. This is the same item on August 10th we brought to the City Council meeting to present this agreement. We received some feedback from council members, and we hope in the staff report and in a revised agreement, we've covered the questions and issues that arose at that meeting. One aspect is we attached the agreement with HWMA and Mad River Hardwoods, their direct agreement, so you could see what that agreement looks like. And Deputy Director Neander also attached some trends in the use of the green waste facility. So we're here to ask or answer any questions pertaining to that. There was a third-party attorney that was brought in to review the agreement, and city manager contacted the attorney and worked with them closely on that review. It didn't result in any substantial changes, but it did result in some changes, and city manager can cover those if you like. The language was changed within the agreement to clarify that this is not a free service, free drop-off. There's rates for bundled curbside and recycling service that covers the facility use of the green waste facility on West End Road as part of what's being paid already. So that language was changed to say no extra charge or additional charge beyond what ratepayers are currently paying to use the facility. There was a question about the administrative fee charged by Humboldt Waste Management Authority to administer this agreement, and it's predominantly staff time to administer our agreement and to issue invoices and things because they are the primary entity under agreement with the waste management or with the green waste facility. So I wasn't going to go through the entire staff report since we covered this a couple months ago, but really in terms of the time frame, this is backdated because we ran past the expiration date on the previous agreement, and we of course are paying as we get invoices, so the agreement has continued in force even though it had expired. But this is a tightened up version, cleaned up version of what you saw back in August. So this term, the way it states, it's December 1st, 2019, so it's back a year, runs through December 31st, 2021. And we can extend it by mutual agreement for an additional 2-year term. The rate is $59 a ton, which is adjusted annually. And I mentioned the admin fee that is part of this agreement. Part of that tonnage is 5%. previously, we worked with the operator to tighten up the system, you know, and that's basically the usage of the system. You know, the facility, Bad River Hardwood's facility, or West Green, takes not only self-haul green waste from Arcata residents, which is controlled through a mechanism of proof of garbage service in Arcata and limited numbers of use before you have to pay for additional use. And the facility also takes what Recology Arcata, you know, collects at the curbside for a certain number of customers who choose to have that convenience. So pick up at the curbside for green waste, and that's also brought to the facility and as part of the total. I'll turn it over to Deputy Director Neander, who's on this call, to if there's any gaps that I left in terms of what we tried to update in this agreement. But it's a document that we can amend along the way. But it's basically just codifying our current use and the current arrangement with Arcata and Humboldt Waste Management Authority to operate this important part of our waste diversion. It continues to be super important in terms of tonnage and waste diversion volume. So, Julie, would you like to add anything?
I just want to, if there's any questions that any member of the council has, or if there's anybody from the public that has questions, I'm happy to try to answer anything that people have. I think you covered it fairly well, Mark.
Okay, then, if there are any questions from council members.
Yeah, Mark, I have a question. We got a letter from a landlord that said, how come I can't dump out at Mad River Hardwoods? Even though I don't pay the garbage bill, my tenant pays the garbage bill, why can't I, as the landlord, dump from that address? And I just wondered if you had any thoughts about that, or some way that landlord could use that, or is that appropriate?
Yeah, Council Member Patino, I spoke to that citizen last night about her concern and her issue, and we're gonna work on that. That's probably more appropriate for the city to work with the green waste operator on trying to work out that. The issue is this: some folks who have rental properties in Arcata require their tenants to sign up for garbage service on their own. So when they move out, the garbage service is terminated for a period while it's vacant until a new tenant comes in and signs up. And there's a gap there when many rental owners want to take advantage of that gap and perhaps do some maintenance on the property, including the yard, clean up the yard, paint the house or whatnot. So that Arcata resident flagged that kind of gap, and I think we can probably work with the green waste facility on trying to fix that. We tried to tighten up the system from abuse, and make it fair as we could, just because they thought they were getting excess volume that wasn't appropriate from out of the city residents as well as in-city residents. So that's something I don't think it needs to be reflected in this agreement, but it's part of the overall program. I think we'll take some steps to see if we can remedy that, because it's obviously we want diversion, and we don't want to complicate things and trip people up. But that's kind of a small loophole.
So, Brett, do you have any questions?
Thank you, Mark.
Sure. Do you have any questions or comments, Ben?
I was just hoping we could highlight any additions or the changes that the third-party attorney made
Sure.
or suggested.
Yeah, I would be happy to do that. I'll just go ahead and pull it up. You've probably all seen those zillion things that I didn't finish today on my screen. Okay. So there were two areas, and we hired Harriet Steiner out of BBK Law as conflict counsel on this to review the agreement, as we have a shared attorney between HWMA and the City of Arcata in Attorney Nancy Diamond. So the two areas that we updated in the agreement had to do associated with the fees in Section 5 on page 4 of the agreement. And it just allowed the city to terminate the agreement if those fees are raised greater than 5% in any given year, that the city could provide 90 days notice to terminate the agreement. I do want to point out, just so the full council and the community understands, HWMA sets a green waste fee for member agencies, which is substantially less than somebody would pay at the tip scale at one of the green waste facilities if they were not a member agency. So if we cancel this agreement, we certainly could do that if we found another outlet for our particular green waste, but it would not necessarily, if we were going to an HWMA facility, we would still be paying the member agency rate regardless of whether we were under contract or not, because we're a member agency, I guess is the easiest way to put it. But it did give us that opportunity to terminate if we felt like the fee was too high and we didn't have the funds to afford that contract or didn't want to. We also added, the original contract had a termination for cause if one of the parties violated a term of the agreement. And we added a termination without cause provision that allowed either party an opportunity to terminate the agreement with 90 days written notice. And then we've added in there that not only do we give each other 90-day notice, but we also must give Mad River Hardwoods 90-day notice, and that the city would be responsible for any self-haul materials that were accepted and billed to the city, appropriately billed to the city in that interim period that HWMA did not pay for. So those were the changes associated with our review with conflict counsel on this agreement, and is back before you tonight for approval.
Okay, Sophia, any questions or comments?
No, thank you.
So, Mark, could you just sort of summarize when the what the limit is in terms of how much people can use the service in terms of quantity, and what happens when it reaches the threshold?
Yeah, I'll turn to Deputy Director Neander. I believe it's
24.
Yeah.
It's 24 cubic yards per calendar year, and so any customer for the City of Arcata's universal garbage system can deliver 24 cubic yards of green waste, and then once they've hit that limit, then they have to pay like any other individual or business who would be delivering to Mad River Hardwoods. So the first 24 cubic yards is no charge because it's covered by this agreement. So this agreement pays for that delivery, but once that's exceeded, then they have to use their own funds to pay for any additional that they bring in a calendar year.
Okay, thank you. Do we have any members of the public who want to comment on this item?
We do not have any public comment on this item.
Right. So any further comments or questions for council? Right. So I invite a member of the council to make a motion on this item.
I'll make a motion to approve the agreement with Humboldt Waste Management Authority for receiving and processing green waste, and authorize the city manager to execute all applicable documents.
Second.
We have a motion and a second. I will do this by roll call. Councilmember Pereira.
Aye.
Councilmember Watson,
Aye.
Vice Mayor Patino,
Oops, aye.
and I vote aye. So thank you to Mark and June. Next is new business. Appoint up to 3 members to the Economic Development Committee for 1 term expiring September 30th, 2021, and 2 terms expiring September 30th, 2023. Is there a council member who would like to make a motion?
Yeah, I'll make a motion to appoint Travis Kuna to the term expiring September 30th, 2021 for the Economic Development Committee, and Walt Geist and Allison Valentin to the term expiring in 2023, September 30th for the Economic Development Committee.
Second.
Any further discussion? And do we have any members of the public who would like to comment on this item?
There is no public comment on this item.
All right, we have a motion and a second, and I will do this by roll call. Councilmember Pereira.
Aye.
Councilmember Watson.
Aye.
Vice Mayor Patino.
Aye.
And I vote aye. So congratulations to the new members of the Economic Development Committee. We certainly need your input in this difficult economic and time of health crisis and pandemic. Right. Next is new business item B. Conduct a public hearing to receive input regarding the unmet transit needs and direct staff to forward all comments to the Humboldt County Association of Governments, HCOG. May I have a staff report, please, from City Engineer Khatri?
Actually, I'm going to take over tonight, Leanne. So good evening, Honorable Mayor, City Council members, staff, and public. Annually, the Humboldt County Association of Government reviews unmet transit needs through a multi-jurisdictional public hearing process throughout Humboldt County. As part of this annual process, HCOG encourages member entities to conduct separate public hearings to receive local comments. Comments can be also received by mail, email, telephone prior to December 31st, 2020 to be included in this year's report of findings. You can send the comments regarding the Arcata Mad River Transit System, AMRTS, directly to City of Arcata, attention Leanne Schutzley, Arcata Mad River Transit System at 736 F Street in Arcata, or telephone at 707-822-3775, or email me. HCOG also will receive comments directly on unmet transit needs until December 31st, 2020. And you can address that to the HCOG office, attention Marcella May, 611 I Street, Suite B, Eureka, California. Their telephone number is 707-444-8208, and her email is also on her website. So comments generated during the public hearing process are to be submitted to HCOG for inclusion in their annual unmet transit needs report of findings. Public input will then be put into one of 3 categories: that there are no unmet transit needs, or that there are no unmet transit needs which are reasonable to meet, or that there are unmet transit needs, including those that are reasonable to meet. The adoption of the final HCOG report of findings will occur early in 2021. And then you also have an attachment there. And I did want to mention that I have replaced flyers on all the buses. They're on the transit center. So the information is readily available for people there. And obviously the transit center is staffed, so we can be a face-to-face also. And I believe that Marcella May is also on the telephone for any questions or comments. Thank you very much.
See, I will now ask questions from the council, starting with Vice Mayor Patino.
Yeah, I have no questions. I just am looking forward to hearing the unmet needs.
Councilmember Pereira,
Nothing to add. Thank you.
Councilmember Watson,
I do not have any questions.
and I do not have questions. Do we have any members of the public who want to comment on this item?
There is no public comment on this item.
So any further comments or questions from the council? And do we have a motion from the council then? And that would be to direct
Do you
staff.
need a, yeah.
Yeah, we would need to.
Okay, I'll make a motion to direct staff to forward all comments to the Humboldt County Association of Governments, HCOG, and we'll take comments up until December 31st, 2020.
Second.
We have a motion and a second. Vice Mayor Patino?
Aye.
Councilmember Pereira?
Aye.
Councilmember Watson?
Aye.
And I vote aye. So thank you, Leanne.
Thank you very much. Good evening.
Next is item C, presentation and discussion on the Redwood Empire Municipal Insurance Fund REMF merger with Public Agency Risk Sharing Authority of California, PARSEC, to create the California Intergovernmental Risk Authority, CIRA. May I have a staff report, please, from Assistant City Manager DeMello.
Thank you, Mayor. Good evening, Mayor and council members. Before we turn it over to REMF General Manager Amy Northam, who will be doing the bulk of the presentation this evening, I just wanted to start with a brief background. Redwood Empire Municipal Insurance Fund, or REMF, is the insurance pool that the city belongs to for all of our risk and liability coverages, as well as our health coverages. The REMF pool is made up of 15 Northern California cities, and Arcata happens to be the furthest one north, and then it includes cities all the way down to city of Cotati, would be the furthest one south. The city of Arcata has been a member of the REMF pool since 1986, and each of the 15 member cities that have representatives that sit on the REMF board. And for us, that is myself and City Manager Karen Beamer. REMF has been working with another municipal insurance pool called PARSEC in evaluating the potential of a merger for the two pools. And Amy, as the general manager for REMF and the general manager for PARSEC, along with executive board members from both of the pools, have been assessing the potential thoroughly and for some time now. And at the last quarterly board meeting for REMF, the REMF board did vote to proceed forward with the merger. So Amy is here this evening to give some background on that and some additional actions that will be coming before the City Council, most likely at your next meeting, to be able to move forward with the merger. So with that, I will go ahead. I will go ahead and ask Amy to come on, and she's, I think, going to share her screen as well for the presentation. Amy.
Great. Thank you, Jeanette, for that introduction. Good evening. My name is Amy Northam, and I am the General Manager of REMF. I'm here to discuss the merger of REMF with another organization just like us called PARSEC to create a new JPA called CIRA. You have a copy of a formal presentation that I prepared, but I'm actually going to go off script a little bit and just talk to you about this. And I've put the presentation together kind of in what, when, where, a type of format. And I certainly welcome questions at the end that you may have of REMF, of PARSEC, or of the. So let's talk a little bit at first about who is REMF. So rather than purchase commercial insurance through a commercial insurance carrier, Arcata has partnered with 14 other cities and towns to pool their money. So rather than purchase commercial insurance, the towns get together and cities get together and pool their money. They pot all the money and they use that money to pay for claims. The cities contribute to that shared pot to pay for those claims. And that fund of money is commonly referred to. Arcata is a Arcata is a member of the pool named the Redwood Empire Municipal Insurance Fund, or REMF. As Danette mentioned, REMF is governed by a board of directors comprised of members in the pool. Public entity pools are fundamentally different from conventional insurance. The primary purpose of any public entity pool is to manage and reduce underlying risks to the benefit of all of the members, while commercial insurers exist primarily to finance losses and really primarily to make profit. REMF is not in the profit-making business. We are a public entity. I too am a public employee. So what is REMF? So as already been mentioned, REMF is a public entity pool representing 15 small to medium-sized cities. We're in 5 different counties in Northern California. We're in Napa, Sonoma, Lake, Mendocino, and Humboldt County. Generally speaking, we run up and down the 101 corridor, although we do have some cities that are a little bit to the east of 101. REMF was formed in 1976 with a mission to provide workers' comp coverage, and then we expanded in the mid-1980s to include liability and other lines of coverage. One line of coverage that's an important difference between us and PARSAC is our self-insured health plan, which we'll go into a little bit more detail in a little while. PARSAC is also a public entity pool. They represent 34 small to cities and towns, and they have 1 fire district. We do not have any fire districts. They were formed in 1986 to provide liability coverage and then added workers' comp coverage in the 1990s. So we started out with workers' comp in the 70s and added liability in the 80s. They did the opposite. They started out with liability and then added workers' comp. PARSAC has added other lines of coverage as well since that time. PARSAC and REMF provide pooled, so that pooled money, liability program, pooled workers' comp program, and then we provide coverage for group purchased property coverage, auto physical damage, cyber liability, and other benefits. However, REMF has a pooled medical health program, unlike PARSAC that I mentioned before. The 2 pools are remarkably similar. We share similar philosophies. We both focus on financial stability. We both have boards that are conservative with their funding and their investments. They share a similar philosophy to have discussions that are both constructive and collaborative. We encourage participation from the members and balance member interests with those of the pool working towards a greater good. We also share a similar culture. Both pools believe that the pool is member-owned, member-governed, and member-driven. So as Arcata is a member of the pool, Arcata directs and owns and drives the decisions that are made at REMF. Both of us exist to serve our members. We're also very similar in that we serve small to medium-sized cities and towns, and we share a similar footprint in Northern California, although PARSAC has presence throughout the whole state. So for example, REMF has Eureka and Arcata as members, and PARSAC has Blue Lake and Ferndale. So our footprint is very much on top of one another. Again, though, all of PARSAC does have some cities in the Sacramento area as well as in Southern California. So given the similarities between these 2 organizations, REMF and PARSAC explored a strategic partnership that started about 2 years ago. And it started as, it could have been anything from sharing training resources to a full-blown merger. And as we explored this strategic partnership, the boards of both pools have directed us to take steps towards a merger. And rather than REMF merging into PARSAC or PARSAC merging into REMF, we're actually creating a new pool, a 3rd pool called the California Intergovernmental Risk Authority, or CIRA for short. So why would we do this? What would be the point of a merger? If I could summarize the why of why we're doing this, it's really to add both depth and breadth and to realize savings. There's going to be great benefits in sharing resources, sharing expenses, and drawing on our strengths. So we're going to take the best of both organizations to create CIRA. There'll be more robust stable programs, and more training resources. There will be built-in succession planning within the pool. And the intent is to both eliminate redundancies and redundancies. And what I mean by that is we're both working together, but separately. So we're both hiring actuaries to do our actuarial reports, and we're both hiring auditors to do our financial audits and our claims audits. So if we could combine and save costs, that would ultimately benefit the members. And what I mean by adding redundancies is we'll have some redundancies in our programs and some redundancies in our staffing, which will only be to the benefit of the to our members. We'll also have economies of scale when we grow from 15 members to 50 members. And while a merger could have realized savings to the members of both pools, the intent is really to provide long-term stability and sustainability. As I mentioned, we would be adding depth and breadth to the agencies, and our singular goal is to better serve our members. The intent is to merge the liability program, the workers' comp program, the property program. There is an interest from the REMF board to keep the self-insured plan separate. So there's an interest to keep the healthcare plan under the care, custody, and control of REMF, at least for the time being. We may look in the future at bringing that into CIRA, but right now we're going to keep it separate. So the documents that you will be presented at the next City Council meeting reflect exactly that. There'll be a set of documents to create CIRA and a set of documents to allow REMF to exist for purposes of the health plan. So what would be the financial impact to Arcata? The merger will consolidate the operations and expenses of both pools. CIRA will work towards eliminating redundant expenses, which will lower loss. Consolidating operations will also achieve greater economies of scale and improve service delivery. CIRA will be in a better position to leverage its larger size for better services, for better rates, and better coverage with service providers and excess carriers. A larger organization will also result in more predictable funding and forecasts, which will reduce the likelihood of future assessments. The merged organization will be more fiscally viable and provide greater long-term stability and sustainability. However, the intent of this merger is not to save money. While hopefully that's going to be a byproduct, the intent of the merger is really to create more stability and more sustainability. I can almost guarantee that come July 1st, 2021, when this merger does happen, there will not be a lower rates, insurance rates on 7/1 of 21. It's going to take some time for this to happen, and the rates will most certainly increase of just the state of the property market right now, and the liability claims that we have. They are they're expensive, and we need to collect enough money from the members to pay for that. So when is this going to happen? This is going to happen July 1st of 2021. And while that does seem, a good 6-7 months away, it's actually a very aggressive timeline, but we think we'll meet it just. So again, at the next City Council meeting, you will be brought forth some documents, one set of documents to create and one set of documents for REMF to continue existing for the self-insured health plan. That's actually all I had tonight. Are there any questions?
Yeah, Amy, I had a question, Paul Patino. So the city of Arcata keeps their self-insured for the medical portion, and somehow it'll be our REMF medical thing will be under PARSAC. I mean, I guess I'm trying to find the decision making for our REMF.
That's a great question. So for the REMF healthcare plan, and that includes the healthcare plan, the vision, the dental, the EAP, all of it, the whole bundle, and that will completely remain under REMF. So REMF will have exclusive control over the healthcare plan. So our board members that sit on the REMF board now will continue to oversee the healthcare plan. So that won't change at all. It will continue to be under REMF. And several years down the line, If it makes sense to bring the Remf healthcare plan under the CIRA umbrella, that's something we'll assess at that time. But right now there's been interest to keep it separate. So that's exactly what we're going to do.
So a follow-up to that is, so we're going to have a Remf board to run the Remf self-insured. Will those same people be on the Parsec or the new groups board?
Yes, absolutely. Great question. So that's really up to the city of Arcata if they want to have the same board members on the Remf board as on the CIRA board. But I would venture to say that most cities those individuals will be the same.
Okay, thank you.
Absolutely.
Sophia, any questions for Amy or Danette?
A lot of sense. So thank you and good luck with the timeline.
Thank you.
Brett?
No, thank you for the presentation.
Absolutely.
Amy,
Amy,
go ahead, Michael. Yeah, go ahead, Mayor.
The question is, will Remf and Parsec continue to exist as separate organizations, or at some point will they all merge into CIRA?
For right now, we will maintain separate organizations. The primary purpose of us keeping the separate organizations is for that health plan, for the Remf health plan. But a secondary piece of that is what we call our tail claims. So right now we're getting lawsuits in, we're getting claims in, and Remf is stepping in and representing the cities in those. When the pools come together and merge into CIRA, it's going to be on a go forward basis. So claims that are happening right now will actually keep and stay under Remf, while the new claims as of 7/1/21 will go under CIRA. So the Remf will continue to exist for the purposes, we call those our tail claims. So Remf will continue to exist for purposes of the tail claims, and Parsec actually will continue to exist for purposes of the tail claims as well. So they will continue with their claims that are already in existence now. And again, a few years down the line, when some of those claims wrap up, workers' comp claims tend to some of them kind of linger for a really long time. We have some workers' comp claims that are close to 30 years old. But liability claims tend to wrap up in about 5 or 6 years. So in a few years, we'll definitely look at that again and say, does it make sense for us to keep maintaining these separate organizations, or do we go ahead and merge that as well? But that's a decision probably 8 years down the line.
So you're talking about moving on. It sounds like other than the health insurance, the idea would be to move all the functions of Remf and Parsec into CIRA.
Correct. Yes.
Mm-hmm.
Amy, can you clarify, because my understanding was the new CIRA board with 50 agencies ultimately would try to pare down the size of that board. So at some point we might have representative board members that not every single city within CIRA would hold a seat on that board. Has that changed?
So that's a great question, Karen. So actually the CIRA board will be all 50 members. So every member of CIRA will have a vote on the board, whether you're the largest city or the smallest city. And the merged organization actually has some very large, a very large city with over 200,000 residents, and one very small city with 1 employee. And all of those cities will have equal vote at the table. That's a lot of work, though, to have 50 people come together as many times as the Remf meetings are. So we're actually going to set up an executive committee that will run the day-to-day kind of operations. So that executive committee will consist of 13 members. And so that'll be more the working committee. And then the big CIRA board will be the 50 members.
Thank you for that clarification.
Absolutely.
Mm-hmm.
Amy, I had a question about, how we're self-insured for the medical part. Why isn't everybody like that?
That's a good question. It's a very unique thing to Remf to be self-insured. We're certainly not the only pool in California to have a self-insured health plan, but it's not a common. It's very common to have pooled workers' comp and liability, but not so common for healthcare. And it's to be honest, it's a beast of a project. And I I would guess that many pools don't want to take that on, take on that liability and that and the expense of running the program.
So the option would be they'd go to. So the option would be that they'd go to Blue Cross or somebody like that.
Exactly. We call
Just-
that fully insured. They'd go to a fully insured plan. Yep, absolutely. That would be.
So most of the other members are fully insured then.
Mm-hmm.
Okay.
Yep.
I'm just curious. Thank you.
And we would like to open up the REMF healthcare plan to the other CERA members, the ones that were previously PARSAC. We would like to invite them to participate in the REMF plan.
Vice Mayor Patino, you might recall that prior to, I think it was 2015, we went self-insured. We were on a fully insured plan for several years, and there was actuarials done that actually showed that it was prudent and it would work for REMF to become self-insured, and it has worked really well so far since.
Great. Thanks for reminding me. I've forgotten about it completely.
So, Brad, any further questions or comments?
No.
Sophia?
No.
Do we have any questions from or input from the public on this at this time?
There is no public comment on this item.
Okay, well, thank you, Amy. Thank you, Jeanette.
Thank you.
Next is oral and written communications. This time is provided for people to address the council on matters not on the agenda. Please raise your hand if you are on Zoom, on the Zoom webinar, or press *9 if you are on the phone line and you would like to make a public comment. Speakers are limited to 2 minutes. When it is your time for public comment, the clerk will unmute you and invite you to speak. Do we have any members of the public who want to make comments at this time?
We do not have any public comment.
Right. So I will close public comments. And next is council and staff reports. So do we have any reports from staff this time, Karen?
Yeah, I think I just wanted to comment a little bit on last night's election. I know there's still numbers coming in, but our Measure A and B both look like they're passing by very safe margins at this point. And in particular, our Measure A, the Arcata Open Space and Parks parcel tax, really was an effort, and I don't mean to call you out, Councilmember Watson, but was led by Councilmember Watson and 2 high school seniors, Zoe Andre and Vivian Gerstein, in our community. So just really wanted to send a thanks out to the 3 of them for their efforts, really in kind of reinstilling the future of Arcata's parks and recreation resources. So we're waiting on final numbers to come back, but it also looks like Measure F passed, so our fire district will be better funded moving forward as well. So with that, turn it back to you.
All right. As far as council and staff reports, Vice Mayor Patino?
I have no report tonight. Thank you.
Council Pereira and Son?
Someone just couldn't stay away. Yeah, just a couple things. We have a Humboldt Waste Management Authority meeting next week. So after that, I should have a more thorough update about CRV buyback and what's happening with that here locally. Also, I'm requesting for our next council meeting, in talking with Arcata House Partnership, they would like for us to express our support to the governor in extending Project Room Key through the winter and into the spring, just given that there's a lot of emphasis now being put into the Project Home Key program that the governor has instituted, which is more long-term and which is fantastic. For our county, we've gotten some funds, City of Eureka and Yurok Tribe, et cetera. But this short term through COVID, having Project Room Key, Arcata House Partnership has said it's really essential for the clients to have that continuity so that people can safely shelter in place when there's more extreme weather. So I'm hoping at our next meeting we can send a letter of support for an extension to the governor.
Well, I just wanted to respond to that. I think that would be very much in line with a standing policy on policies that we support. So we can bring it back as an item for the council, or if not, that I think I could just have staff draft that with your input, Councilmember Pereira, and just sign it under that authority. It's up to you whether you want to have it on the agenda or just have it directly sent with your input directly.
Happy to help, however. So I'm happy to provide input if that's helpful to get a letter out sooner.
I think that would work better if you just give input to staff and then we'll just issue it. I don't think it needs to go back to council. All right, any further comments?
No, thank you.
All right, Councilmember Watson.
No, I don't have anything to report tonight. I was also happy to see the results of our local measures. And yeah, nothing to report this evening.
And it was good to see democracy in action leading up to yesterday. That tremendous public participation and level of voting that we haven't seen in the United States in many years, and that was really nice to see. And I certainly hope that everybody involved and all the candidates support letting the democratic process work, because that's what we need. I mean, at this time of some questions in public trust, I think that there's an extra responsibility to candidates, especially at these high-level offices, to trust the process and to trust the people of this country. So I have nothing further, and we are adjourned.